Hello and welcome to today's episode of Thursday Tech Bites. I am Rick Vanover, the Rickatron, and we have a really cool topic. Last week I said I'm really excited for this one. We're going to talk about security and common gaps in full stack security. I'd like to introduce somebody that I've been really impressed with. NTirety is a Veeam service provider, but they're quite consultative was the word I used. A little bit different in the market, and that's what caught my attention. And this guy, Josh, by the way, if I heard right when we had our pre-meeting, you're both CTO and COO of
I
NTirety.
am. I
Whoa,
am.
man, you got more hair than me. You're doing good at that.
Barely.
So
Yeah.
take a moment, Josh, introduce yourself to the audience and welcome to Tech Bites.
Thanks so much, Rick. So my name is Joshua Henderson. I am a Texas native. I'm a little bit north of Austin. Live here with amazing wife, two awesome kids, and I've been with NTirety for about 3 years now. Prior to this engagement, I ran Colo and Cloud for Zayo Group, which was a fairly large fiber and data center provider. I've been the CTO at a couple of other, more boutique type colo and hosting companies. And prior to that, did about 15 years in the startup space. So had, an awesome opportunity to kind of build and operate a couple companies. But yeah, I've been pretty blessed to have the opportunity to see a lot of different size businesses with a lot of different tech stacks and get to see, all the potential challenges that come with both operating and securing those kinds of environments.
Yeah, so Josh, that's what really attracts me to really the topic here today. And we're right on the edge of Cybersecurity Month, October, Cybersecurity Awareness Month, actually, I think it is. And what we're doing here at Veeam, backup is this natural adjacency to cybersecurity. And so I thought that was a really good kind of conversation to have here today about the common gaps in full stack security. And with what you guys are doing at NTirety, and then Veeam as a backup solution as part of that. I think backup is a part of that. But as we go to the slide here, are people drowning in point solutions, or am I overreacting here?
No, certainly. I mean, we see it every day, with our customers who are getting pitched by, every vendor imaginable, and as we move into these slides, I mean, just the amount of new products that are coming to market is absolutely, both amazing. And then the flip side of that coin is it's very scary, right? So there's a lot of things that come with options.
Yeah, I think that the amount of solutions in the market is a double-edged sword. You need specialized things for certain use cases, and you also need different approaches. So that just kind of inherently, just by best of breed reasons, indicates there'll be so much out there. And I myself, look at Veeam as this interesting crossroads of data. Okay, because it's reasonable to expect a significant percentage of the world's business data is protected by Veeam. So we've seen some things. And what you guys do as well at NTirety, you see a lot of different customer scenarios, a lot of different use cases and business needs, maybe some different industries. But talk to me about the cloud and the cloud native computing foundation landscape. And that's a whole new frontier that a lot of organizations are about to embark upon, or maybe are already there.
That's right.
How does that play into the mix?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I find these landscape visuals fascinating, right? And I track this one from the CNCF pretty closely. I love watching, all the companies being incubated and then ultimately launching as another solution. But, as a service provider who consults with a lot of different companies, we spend a lot of time looking at what's available in the market, what the analysts are saying about these products, right? What's trending, what's coming in and out. That's a full-time job. Right, and that's a full-time job for folks on our staff. For myself, I spend a lot of time doing this, and I think that the thing that this landscape slide illuminate extremely well is how complicated and overwhelming it can be to put together a comprehensive solution. And then also make sure it drives value to the business and your customers, and then of course make sure that it ties in with the other decisions you've already made around other technologies. And then, of course, we still have to, secure it, make sure that it's operationalized and hopefully it covers all the critical areas. So, for CNCF, you're right. I think a lot of folks are moving this direction, right, to containerized workloads, things that we can, spin up and spin down are more ephemeral. And that, of course, brings a whole different set of complexity there. And one of the things I like to point out on this slide specifically, right, is for the last years, we've been talking a lot about migration to the cloud, right, or ways we get to and from the cloud. And really that conversation has slowed down quite a bit, right? We're there. For the most part, a lot of companies.
I was like, where are you going with that?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, whoa.
A lot of companies already have that solution in place, right? So most companies are using multiple cloud providers today, right? Software as a service applications are there. And so what we're seeing, instead of this discussion about how we get to the cloud, right, is it's this rapid adoption of all of these new technologies that are coming out. Because it's seen as a way to really drive value to the organization and business, right? And so you're seeing an interesting breakdown of folks that are adopting technologies as soon as they come out, and then very quick followers that are just waiting for, some sort of best practices to be established, and then they quickly follow.
Yeah, and by the way, I want to relay, we are live on a number of different social networks, but live is live, friends. I just got word from the producers that there is an API issue with LinkedIn, so the chat is not as chatty as before. Attendance is good, so thank you all for joining. I do believe that the comment engagement over on YouTube, X, and the Facebook are all working, but the thought here is that at least LinkedIn, which is usually one of the more engaging streams, we're not able to broker the comments. You could probably hit me up on Twitter. Oh, we got Moheb just dropped one in, so it's kind of here and there. So anyways, big welcome to everyone, but the engagement is just a little bit different here today. Hey, that's the way it goes with, I think it's actually fitting, Josh, if we talk about cloud native landscape, things change. Things change on you. APIs change on you. Platforms change on you. And security requirements, threats, all of those different things. It's such a dynamic space that I feel that, organizations have a lot of pressure to stay current. I think there's a pressure of currency to stay current and aware of some of these different things. Do you see that in your practice?
We absolutely do. And I think that is, that's represented in those numbers we just talked about with adoption rates, right? So I think one of the most interesting ones we saw very recently, right, was this very quick adoption of the Chat GPT and OpenAI and all the competitors, right, in that space was pretty quickly adopted, right? Even with the big companies, right? Microsoft obviously leading the charge on an OpenAI perspective and what they're bringing to the table, but absolutely, we're adopting faster than we ever have before, and I think that's in an effort to, to keep up and stay relevant, as you said.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about the business side of how you guys roll, because let me explain why I'm asking this to everybody. First of all, as a lot of people know, I've been at Veeam for nearly 13 years, and I really love the value that our Veeam cloud service providers have in the market. And it really starts with one of the best ultra resilient copies of backup data through Cloud Connect with insider protection. And then it also goes into, we'll talk about ransomware here in a second, but for those watching on the streams, a lot of I'm based in Central Ohio, and we have one of the Veeam support centers here. And within support, they have what we call critical incidents, which is where the ransomware cases go. And when I talk to them all the time, what works, what doesn't, tell me the worst practices so I can pivot that out as advice of what not to do. I'm always listening for these things, because no two disasters or no two ransomware incidents are the same. There's a lot of interesting behavior. But why I bring this up, Josh, is that the details, they matter, and customers have more versatility when they have help. And I mean that in a case of when I talk to the support team, it's like, oh yeah, they had their data and they recovered to the VCSP's IaaS platform and everything was fine. Those are the stories I'm hearing from our service providers, because a lot of times customers, when they look at some of the pressures, time, take this one, risk, budget, then there's this other like litigation and law type of force. For example, I've been debriefed of a number of scenarios where law enforcement, cybersecurity law enforcement, or cybersecurity insurance takes over the infrastructure. And while they have their backup data, they can't recover because it's under investigation. And have you ever had that type of scenario when you've talked to someone that's like, hey, I didn't even think about not being able to recover if I had the infrastructure? And service providers just give you like extra ways out of that problem. I mean, I hear that so often. I don't know if in your circles, if you hear scenarios like that.
Yeah, not only do we hear about it, we participate in it. I mean, we are the provider, right? That's getting to help these customers when, unfortunately, they haven't been a customer yet, and maybe this is their introduction to us as helping through one of those scenarios. But yes, I think the NTirety perspective. And we have a unique perspective, right? NTirety was formed out of the merger of hosting.com and Hostway, right? So two really, really kind of names rooted in technology space, from everything from internal infrastructure hosting to applications to database to compliance, right? And in our legacy, right, we kind of have dealt with all of these technologies for a long time. So from NTirity's perspective, we want to see the full stack, right? We want to understand the full stack. And to your point, be able to kind of bring some of those experiences to the table when a customer is going through it. As you said, it's so much more than just the technical side. Typically, when one of these events unfortunately happens, it is dealing with external, legal and law enforcement and insurance companies, and at the same time trying to get back to an operational state so the company can get back to making money, right, and taking care of customers. So yeah, it is an interesting situation, and certainly something in our experience, you want someone that has done it before, kind of walking that path with you when it occurs.
So when you go down that path, I love this analogy here. We got to find the needle in the haystack. And when Josh and I were preparing the content, I said, let's really talk about some of the challenges when it comes to cybersecurity. And I actually really love this list of 8 that you have here, Josh. And I'd actually challenge that, at least in my practice, so much of this aligns to the advice I give to market. But I mean, I could talk really each of these so often, and I'm going to gravitate first to business email compromise. I mean, still to this day, I'd say this is something that we, with training, could really tackle most easily, most quickly. But tell me why these are some of the top challenges. But I just keep gravitating to the one that it bugs me the most.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say from the BEC perspective, I had an email in my inbox this morning asking for a $250,000 wire to be sent, to just some random place. So of course, phishing awareness training is definitely one of the key things for that. But we're still seeing, 50 billion in annual losses, right, coming from that. So it definitely bugs me as well. And every time I see it, or customers email us about it, it's just a very frustrating thing that we can't kind of get past this thing. But it's still working, right, for the bad actors, and so they're going to continue to do it. I would say on this list, we're seeing this stuff in the news, every single day, and it's sad and it's unfortunate. But from a ransomware perspective, we had just in the last couple of days, right, the Sony event, that we're still waiting to see what the outcome of that is. But the Russian actors that kind of got into that are saying ultimately they have all of Sony's data at this point, right, and that's on top of the 2011 compromise that they also had regarding some of the things there. So that's a ransomware, right? So in there, they're not even and in some cases, like Sony, they're not even going back to the business and trying to get money anymore. It's going direct to black market and out to sell, right? So very rapid, very quick. Social engineering, right? I think we saw a great example of that with the MGM and Caesars compromise over 10 days of outage from that. And again, just very public, and these things are happening even to the big guys, right? And I think that the question there is, does that is the implication of that is they have more complexity in their environment? Is it just that it's too much to manage, right? All those point solutions kind of coming together. What is it, right? And I don't know that we have a specific answer, but I would say from a trends perspective, right, we're seeing that proliferation of options out there and being rapidly adopted is definitely some of the things that we're seeing, right? People just can't keep up with this much change. So they're hitting it from every angle, right? Zero-day compromises. We saw that in the Move It compromise that happened, right? And these are the big names out there, right? Insurance companies and financial institution, right? This is Move It, for those that aren't familiar, right, was it's a secure file transfer system, right? And so with a SQL injection attack there, right, they were able to get access to the database and direct access to customers' data. Right. So, yeah, there's no specific trend here. It's just everywhere and anywhere. Right. And so that kind of comes back to that point of the more comprehensive and blueprinted and simple we can make, the solution. Right. And then, of course, have that solid backup and recovery plan, the better.
Well, Josh, you really hit on something that I want to dig into. And really, it's because a lot of times the worst of scenarios are a combination of other factors leading to failure. And the best analogy that I can give is take like air travel. There's a TV show here in the US called Air Disasters. And I don't go to it for the morbid side of it. There's some people that like that stuff, but mainly I go look to like understanding the breakdown of what happened. Was it a technology? Was it a procedure? Was it an error? Right. And what I consistently see in that TV show, for example, is there's a compound sequence of events that led to a very bad outcome. And I think cybersecurity is a good example as well. So if we go back to the slides real quick for a second, you can take a combination, see if my telestrator is going to work for me here today. You could take a combination of, say, let's take social engineering, faking yourself through a password reset, right? And then, or let's talk about, business email compromise, right? Phish to this day, if you look at things like the ransomware trends report from Veeam, if you look at the Verizon data breach incident report, you look at some of the Coveware data, everywhere you go, it kind of aligns and tells the same story, right? And then you could talk about some of the different zero-day scenarios that are out in the market, meaning exploiting a vulnerability. And, and that's the worst of scenarios, because even if I did patch, if there's not a patch, I'm still at risk, right? So all of these, again, there's a combination of things. But what really strikes me the most here, Josh, and I'm going to put myself to the test on my Zoom it ability, is really the ability to look at these IoT attacks. That's a new scenario that I hadn't even thought of, because those things are on a network, probably with an expired certificate.
Yep.
Up 37% globally. That is absolutely shocking.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things where it's super easy, right, to put something on the network, and typically we're not thinking about isolating that to its own VLAN or segmenting that traffic a different way. And yeah, not only are we seeing things like invalid certificates, easy to get into, but we're also seeing a lot of folks just not change default passwords, or unfortunately, right, with some of the vendors that are out there, we're seeing backdoors be in there where again, things like cameras as an example, right, are just streaming to multiple locations that you don't want them to, right, as an example. So I think that brings up conversations around network segmentation, how we're treating these devices, and then really kind of gets into that zero trust type of discussion, how we're treating these. And we're seeing this is becoming more and more of a threat, and I think this will become continue to kind of trend that way.
Zero trust. You said it, man. You went there. Is it a mindset? Is it a product? Is it an architecture? Just give the audience a definition, because I think it really depends on where you sit, what zero trust means sometimes.
It's all of those things, right? I think it can be absolutely all of those things from a mentality perspective, right? We're no longer in this, in the four walls with a moat around it and a nice firewall to get in and out, right? And our users only access the things they need from inside. Not only are our users, in many different places than they have been historically, the data that they're accessing and needing to manipulate is also in more places than it's ever been. And then on top of that, we're putting, things like IoT devices and, more and more bits talking to the network and talking to that data. So again, we've driven complexity up to a place where, it requires us to think about trust very differently, right? So not only, Rick or Josh accessing this device or this data, and do they have the rights to do that? But at this time of day, right, where are they logging in from, and how does that look? And usually Rick is an 8 to 5 guy. All of a sudden it's 3 a.m. and he's in another country, right? And why is that happening? So being able to kind of work on not just the permission sets, but the activities and the concepts around how they're accessing that data, and be able to say, look, we need to be able to give Rick as a person, as an identity, access to this specific application or set of data for this specific duration, right? Those are the kinds of concepts we need to start to have in order to really kind of do that least trust, right? Least permission set that we can do. Because all of these things layer on top of each other, right? You brought up 4 or 5 points in the list there. All of those are different attack vectors, and security very much is a layered approach in order to get that comprehensive solution you need. And certainly, ZTNA is one tool that we have in our arsenal there to do that.
Yeah, so there's so much to unpack there, Josh. And again, this is one of the things that really caught my eye about your team and your colleagues, is that you guys really take that holistic approach here, and backup is part of it, right? And I think that's awesome. That's where Veeam sits, and,
Right.
and we don't really try to oversell ourselves in that regard and overstate our capabilities. But all I can say is that I have nothing but evidence that bad things can happen to good data, and I just want to be able to get out of those problems. And that's where Veeam sits in the market. One other thing that jumps out to me, right? And so I think for the audience, the common gaps in full stack security, I really think this is a really good punch list. And ransomware, especially US audience, a lot of people from we got people from Paris, Morocco, we got Houston, we got Texas again we got Costa Rica, Athens, everyone. It looks like comments are coming back midstream. Love that. But the US has like 10x more. And I'm asking your opinion here, Josh. Is that like a GDP economy thing, or is that the US is really bad at cybersecurity, or maybe a little bit of both?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily that the U.S. is bad. I think it's where the most opportunity has historically been, right? And like everything else, we follow the money, right? And so, I think opportunity, but maybe utilization, maybe adoption of technologies is better here, or more prevalent here. But yeah, I think the majority of the rationale here is success has been seen in the U.S. economy, right? And so that's where the attacks will continue to happen.
Well, that's it. Follow the money. That is absolutely the mindset of the threat actors. And, if I am putting this in practical advice for the audience, it's really think about, if we could go back to the list here, at a minimum, start with, do you have a plan for ransomware? Talk to Veeam, talk to NTirety, just about getting a copy of your data that you can recover from. And then also, I see a lot of orgs not even have like a people plan. Who's in charge? What are we going to do? Who can consider this a disaster? Are we training social engineering techniques to our employees in business email compromise? Are we updating, products like to tackle 0-day and other known vulnerabilities? Are we monitoring products that are the supply chain, right? Are we looking at traffic in and out of the network? Do we need it? Ask that. Cloud-based attacks, that's a big one, right? Leaky bucket, that's the classic example, but I think we're also so close to like a public cloud newsworthy incident of epic proportions, right? If it hasn't happened yet. And then IoT, thinking about that, and then insider threats, right? These are just a good set of things to start with. And just got relayed from our outstanding social media producer comment from Bosco Morales. Money talks, The hacker walks. I like that.
That's great.
That might be my first tattoo. We'll see about that. We'll see about that. No, thank you for that comment, Bosco. That one's a keeper. That's a great one. All right, so let's keep it moving here. I got one more slide to talk about, and again, to the audience, right? Veeam partners with so many people, different organizations. I like to say that partnerships are in Veeam's DNA. If you think about resellers, service providers, alliance partners, distribution partners, professional services partners, global systems integrators, and if I'm forgetting anyone, I'm really, really sorry. But NTirety is a Veeam cloud service provider, but I think they really do a lot more. So, Josh, give everyone an overview of kind of the stack that you all offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, I think for us, it starts at the core level, right? The infrastructure. And this, immediately when we're talking about this, we're hitting some of the key points, Rick, that you just brought up in the last slide, which is, how are we backing up that infrastructure? What's our recovery plan when that happens? How do we quickly recover from an incident when it does occur? So from a managed infrastructure perspective, this is private cloud. This is, this can be in our environment. This can be in a public cloud. When we say managed infrastructure, it's both, right? It's infrastructure. We really don't care. The blueprint's the same regardless. We just want to make sure that it meets, the customer's needs. And then as we move up stack, we really start to focus on the data, where it sits, how do we protect it, how do we optimize that from a database perspective, performance perspective, protection perspective. And then we start to get into, the managed security, right? So this is SOC SIM type scenarios here. This is, eyes on glass, watching for all of those needles in a haystack we talked about earlier, right? So all the sources of logs that could come in, making sure that across all of those point solutions, we have data coming in that kind of points us when something starts to occur inside that network that shouldn't be. And that's a very, very key thing there. And then, the last bit kind of being managed compliance, and this is really about doing what we say we do as a company, right? So are our controls in place? Do we have those people, that can declare an emergency and run a run book when an event occurs? And so from NTirity's perspective, we really view it as a comprehensive solution is what's required to really do this well. Doesn't mean NTirety has to sell you every bit of these, but it does mean we want to play a role in coming up with that comprehensive solution. Things that we've seen work for 20-something years at large scale and all kinds of sizes and verticals of business, and really, hopefully help guide a customer there.
Outstanding. This is really good, Josh. Thank you so much. And I got to do a number of very VIPSO, very important shout outs. Number one, Marco Fabri, a Veeam legend from Italy joining, Stephen Seagrave from Ireland, one of the vanguards, Dimitri from the Ukraine, Matthew from New Zealand. Does anybody have any idea what time it is in New Zealand right now? Thank you for joining. Daniel from Canada, in Prague, India, Brazil. Great attendance here today. Thank you all for joining. But before I forget, we have a whole bunch of new things coming, and it's already published on LinkedIn, everyone, but we're going to start an additional type of stream called the Veeam 100 show. Highly recommend everyone check that out. That's going to go, we have a preview of the program tomorrow. Shout out Madalena, she's on this stream. And then also next week, the 5th, we're going to have the very first Veeam 100 show. Wow, friends, you got to watch this. This has a super high registration. All I can say is that Veeam community, but on this side, Veeam community rocks. And then also on Tuesday, the 3rd of next week, we are going to have the Industry Insights. Jeff Reichert is going to be hosting Infinidat, one of our storage alliance partners. We also got South Africa and Raj from the USA tuning in. So thank you all so much for joining. But I would also be remiss to not thank Ali from the ATX, who kind of brought Josh and his colleagues up to me from NTirety. And Josh, thank you so much for joining me here on the Tech Bytes stream.
My pleasure, Rick. Thanks so much.
All right. And a big shout out to Felicia in Texas, and then Jeffrey in Central Ohio for our social media and video ops productions. I could not do it without those professionals. Thanks for watching. That concludes our stream today.